Alright, to get started, we're going to create a new project and we'll select Javafx instead of Java. And then this first option here, the Javafx application, is what you want. Is that visible? Can everyone see that?
Yes.
All right. Okay, getting started, it's already got a lot of code already here. So we've got a bunch of imports. When you import for Javafx, make sure you get the Javafx version of whatever you're importing, because a lot of this stuff also has a regular Java version, and if you grab the wrong one, then your Javafx stuff will not work. Alright, we're going to have a class that extends application. This is kind of where your program starts. You still got main down here, but you don't use it. Okay? All it does is launch your application. So all of your program actually starts up here in this class that extends application. You're going to have a start method, and start is basically your main. The demo program comes with a button. They put some text on the button, and then they've got an action event handler here. This is what happens whenever you click the button. Everything in this box. Javafx has several different layouts, and the one they give you here is called a stack pane. I'll show you more about layouts in a minute, but it's kind of the way you arrange all of your buttons and text boxes and labels. All those things are called nodes. Some people call them widgets, but the way those things are placed on the scene, the way they're arranged and laid out, the stack pane kind of dictates how that's done. If you don't want to use a stack pane, there's a grid pane and a flow pane and some other panes, and I'll show you how those work. The stack pane is called root. It calls a function called getChildren and then add, and add will add all of your widgets, all of your nodes to the scene. We've only got a button here, so that's the only thing they're adding, but you would add everything you need to add from there. Then they create the window, passing in the root and the size of the window. That's 300 by 250. The title of the window, and pretty much show it to the user. So just click run. You should get a window here that says hello world, and it's got that button in the middle there. And you click the button down in the console, you should see the output. Alright, so that's done by the action event handler. This is kind of a function inside of a function. Another way of doing this, you notice there's a little light bulb here. You can convert this to a lambda expression. It's just kind of, it's shorter, a little bit cleaner. It's like writing a function on the spot with less, like creating the function. So you can just click on that light bulb, tell it to create or convert to a lambda, and it does this. It creates an action event. You have a little arrow pointing to that event, and you just code whatever you want in here. This just says, you know, hello world to the console, but you could have that do math calculations. You could have it open new windows. You know, pretty much any code you want can happen whenever that button is clicked. Alright, do you get how this works?
Yes.
Maybe. So far, so good. Let's create another button just to see what happens. So we've got the button created up here. Let's just make another one. Something you can do. Now they set the text separately, but you can set it on the spot. I'm going to make mine an exit button. And then I can set up my event handler for button 2. Button 2 dot set on action. And I'll make it kill the program with exit 0, maybe. We'll try that anyway. So that creates the button, but it does not add it to the scene. So we'll go down here, root, get children, dot add button, button 2. That should put it on the scene, but where does it go? I guess we can run it and find out. So it's there, right? Stacked on top of the other button. And that's why they call this the stack pane. Because you just stack stuff on top of each other. Not very useful for what we're doing here, but let's see if our button works. It totally works. Alright, so we were at least successful there. The stack pane though is not a good fit for something like this. We want to be able to add our widgets and them not be stacked on top of each other. So let's go click on this link, Javafx layouts.
Hold on, sir. Can you go back, please, to the NetBeans? I think I lost you. Yeah. Can you hold on like 2 minutes?
Sure. Here's some of the different layouts that are available. The first one here is the border pane. If I can zoom in a little bit. And this allows you to lay everything out in one of the 5 positions that it shows you there. You can tell it you want this thing centered on the right, on the top, on the left, and on the bottom. Alright, so there's 5 basic regions that are already there for you, and you set your nodes in one of those places. There are 2 other containers called an H box and a V box, horizontal and vertical. And you can put your nodes inside of one of those boxes and then put the box in one of these regions. And so if you wanted a whole lot of buttons, let's say we wanted a column of buttons right here, we could create a V box, a vertical box, add all of our buttons to that V box, and then add the V box to the border pane on the left, and that would give us a column of buttons on the left. So this is one of the layouts that is available and a lot more useful than the stack pane in most cases. Scroll down a little bit, and they give you an example here of the H box and the V box. And this is the output you would get, or this is what an H box would look like. Gives you a horizontal box that you can add your nodes to. And then you can put H boxes inside of other H boxes or other V boxes. All this stuff kind of nests within itself. As long as it's a node, as long as it's derived from the node class, in most cases, you can use them interchangeably. There's the V box. You can have, vertical box of links. Here's some more stuff on the stack pane. Like I said, in my opinion, not very useful, but. And then here's one some people like, it's the grid pane. The grid will allow you to set up a grid. Like they draw the lines in it here, but those lines would not actually appear in your program. And you can just set everything up. Okay, I want this to go on row 1 or row 2, and then it's like an Excel spreadsheet. You can have it span across multiple rows or multiple columns, like this pie chart here. Obviously spanning across, there's only one row, but it spans across 2 different columns. And so if you like working with grids or spreadsheets or something like that, then the grid pane might appeal to you more than the border pane. And again, you can put your H box and V box and stuff like that within the grid cells. The size of the cells are laid out according to whatever you're putting there. So if you put a really big button there, then it's going to be a really big row or a really big column. If all of your nodes are different sizes, this thing can be a little awkward to work with because you have to tell it which nodes span over the different rows and columns to get it looking pretty, but it's manageable, it's doable. As far as keeping everything looking pretty, they show you some stuff like setting the gap, setting the padding, setting the spacing and things like that, so you can keep your nodes from being right on top of each other and bunched up together. You can customize the GUI however you want to. The flow pane, this one is kind of cool. I don't know that it's very useful, but it just rearranges all the nodes anytime the window is changed. So if you take your window and it was completely full of widgets and you were to do something like this, then it will shuffle those guys around and rearrange them to try to fit the window. And because they move and everything's dynamic, it is called a flow pane. So it's kind of cool, but I don't know that I've ever found it to be very useful. Those are I think the grid pane and the border pane are the most useful. There's some other ones in here that you can look at if you want to. The tile pane, I think there's an anchor pane, and I think that's about it. They give you some documentation and some examples of all of these guys, and different ones fit different needs. I think at the end of this example they put it all together. Yeah, and it looks something like this. They've got a border pane holding the whole thing. The top is a H box. The right, they've nested a flow pane inside the right side of their border pane. The grid pane is nested in the center of the border pane. V box on the left over here. That's probably another H box or something like that. So, pretty good example. Lots of code to look at. I think one of the most important things going into this project is to try to decide what you want your program to look like. Maybe sketch it out. That's what I did. Sketch it out. Say I'm going to have buttons here. I'm going to have menu bar across the top, or I'm going to have scroll bar here. You know, however you want to do it. Some of the students will have the center area here sectioned off for images. They'll put the description down at the bottom, and then they'll have maybe arrows left and right that you can click through the items in their store. You know, so you can lay this out however you want to. There's, you know, an infinite number of options. It's pretty cool, but it also is some work. So just know that going into it. If you need help with anything, I don't mind helping, but this is not a spoon-feeding lab where I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. I'm going to show you some resources. You're going to do the research and put something cool together. All right, any questions about the panes, grid pane, growing panes? Okay. All right. Let's look at UI controls. So here's a list of the stuff that is available. I think there's actually more than this, but some of the stuff that is readily accessible that you might want to use in your program. Label. A label is just a static thing, like a label. It can also be an image though. So if you want to put pictures, you may use the label for that. Button, it's obvious what a button is. You can put pictures on buttons too. They can be colored, you can shape them all weird, you can have them glow. There's all kinds of cool stuff you can do with just about any of these nodes. Radio button, does anybody know what a radio button is? What's the difference between a button and a radio button?
Radio button is, it is push.
It's like a checkbox, you can only have one sign.
Yeah. You can push all buttons.
No, but if you have multiple radio buttons, one always has to be turned on.
Okay.
So I guess one has to be true at all times.
Sure. Toggle button, checkbox, choice box, text fields. That's where you would like get input. Text field I think is pretty big. Password field, that will be, you know, all asterisked out so nobody can see what's being typed. Scroll bars, scroll panes, tooltips. That's kind of cool. Anyways, you can look through this stuff, and if you want something in your program that you don't see here, I can probably help you find that. So I put that link there, and let me see if there's anything on here I wanted to cover. Like I said, this is an overview of the architecture and how Javafx is built on the standard Java. Probably not necessary for the lab for sure, but there's a lot of cool stuff that's linked in here that you may want to look at. If you're into CSS, if you do a lot of CSS stuff, you can look at this. You can incorporate your own CSS style sheets.
So we could just, instead of doing the web effects, we just add the web component and then
And just bam, yeah.
make the UI just out of HTML and CSS.
There you go. So let Java be your back end. They talk about some of the effects available. Like that's what I was saying. You can do glows and blurs and shadows and transparencies and weird stuff like that. So there's a lot of information in here. Some examples of all the GUI stuff. And then the last resource, probably the most important one, I have on the introduction page. The Java Online documentation and the Javafx API documentation over here on the right. Over here you've got access to all of the classes that are available to you and what they do. So if you wanted to know exactly how, I don't know, let's say the grid pane works, we click on the grid pane. You can see the inheritance. A grid pane is a node, that's why it can be added in place of any node, just about anywhere that a program will take a node, you can put a grid pane in there. If you didn't want to use any of those pre-made panes, if you wanted to make your own, then you would be deriving probably from layout pane or maybe even layout region, and you could create your own. Like I said, that's beyond the scope of this class, so I don't recommend that, but there's some example code here of how grid pane works. It's a little bit different from a stack pane, but you're still going to create it. They call it grid pane instead of root. You still add stuff to it using getChildren.add. Here they're using add all instead of just add, so they add multiple items at once. You can put as many nodes in there as you want to. A little bit about row and column sizing. But the idea is that you can refer to the API documentation to learn about any of these classes. Lots of good stuff in here. And then down at the bottom they show you all the inherited properties. Inherited from node, this is important. If you wanted to look at the effects you could add to it, you might click on something like that. Methods available. All kinds of methods for adding your nodes and alignments and all kinds of crazy stuff in here. But learn how to use the API. The API is where it's all at, and learning to use APIs in general is a good skill as a programmer. You'll have to do this at some point. Maybe not with Javafx, but it may be OpenGL, or it may be I don't know, JSON or something like that. All kinds of other stuff out there that you're going to look at online documentation and wade through the stuff that's there to try to find what you need to make your program work. So, any questions?
What did we go under in the packages to see that? We went under Javafx beans.
So right here on the intro page, I've got a link there in orange. It says Java Online Documentation. Got that?
Yes, I got that.
Okay, and then on the right it says Javafx API Documentation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot of stuff on this page that can be helpful. There's like tutorials in Javafx, but what I'm looking at is the Javafx API Documentation. When you click on that, it's going to bring you to a page that shows you all of the classes, all of the packages, every class's methods and what it's derived from, and it will also show you what classes are derived from it. And that can be really useful. Where is node? Node. Direct known subclasses of node. So it lists several classes here. All of these things are nodes, so all of these can be added, and they will have other classes derived from them. So if we look at shape, shape has an arc, a circle, all this stuff. Any of these things could be added anywhere a node is accepted, because they are derived from node. They are all nodes. And they give you some example code for some of these. We could try to add a circle to our scene using this right here. Should we try that?
Sure, why not?
Why not? Let's just copy that. Let's just start up at the top, paste that. Remember, in NetBeans you can right click and hit format, or do an Alt-Shift-F. Makes everything a lot nicer to read. Now you see two lines like this, underlining a specific class, that means the imports are not there, and you can do a Control-Shift-I, and that brings in your imports. And we'll add circle somewhere up here. There it is. Alright, so I created a circle. I set the X and Y and the radius. I don't know what color it is. What did I do wrong here? I think that doesn't belong.
Can you show us where to do location if you wanted to move the circle?
Alright, we want to move it. Alright, then we're going to scrap the stack pane because it's no good to us. We want to go grid pane or border pane?
Or
Good. And you can leave it called root or call it something else if you want to. Fix the import. There is our border pane. Now, how do we set something in a region? We already know it has 5 regions. One thing you can do is you can click on border pane, right click, and then show Java doc. And it will open the Javafx API and take you straight to that class. And it will tell us some things here. Okay, so I see some set functions: set top, set center, set bottom. So these are the functions that are going to add these nodes to those locations. So if we're going to set the circle, where do you want to put the circle?
Middle.
It's already in the middle.
And then off center to middle.
That doesn't make any sense. Let's just put it in the middle. Let's do this. Root dot set center circle. And let's put a button on the bottom and a button on the left or the top. I don't know. Put it wherever you want. Set top. Button goes on top. Button 2 can go on the bottom. And it crashed and burned. Duplicate children added.
I think you gotta add them before you set them.
Do I need to add them at all?
Very good question.
Nope. Not if they're set. Now you can see they're all smack up against the side there, and they're all on the left, and there are functions in there you can set that would change that. Like I think setting the padding maybe. Let's try that. Insets, it defines the padding in terms of insets. So let's check out insets. I need to know Okay, so it does top, right, bottom, left. I'm looking at the constructor, right? If I'm going to create some insets. Just to slow down a little bit, why do I know I need insets? If you look at the set padding, set padding function here, it takes insets as a parameter. So I know I have to pass in some insets, but I don't know what insets are. So then I look at the Java documentation on insets and look at the constructor, and it's just taking 4 doubles as top, right, bottom, and left. So with that in mind, armed with that knowledge, let's go over here and try this. New insets, top, bottom, left, and right, top, left, I don't know. We'll make them all the same. It's 4 doubles. I know it needs that. And then fix imports. We don't want the alt insets. We want the Javafx insets. And now we've got a little bit of padding around all of our nodes.
Did it say whether or not it does that by pixel value or by just?
It probably does. I didn't look at it. It looks like it's probably pixel value.
Or some arbitrary scaling, like kind of like an interface builder. Oh, it just says double. Oh, it's still easy to play with.
I know what you're saying. That's a good question because you would want to know that, but I don't know that it's showing that anywhere. I wonder if set padding actually would tell us. We look at it still doesn't say. Doesn't give us a very clear definition. I am assuming it's pixels. I mean, would you buy that's 10 pixels? It doesn't scale with the window size, so I imagine it's in pixels. I even think the circle's also in pixels, like the radius being 50, that's probably 50 pixels. So I could get a bigger circle if I just change that to 150. Should be 3 times bigger. Yeah, that works. Any other questions? Feel like you have enough to work with?
How do you, your counter button, where, because according to the demo, it shows that you're doing a shopping cart. So, how do you get the number in? Like, I have an item, I put the number in, click a button, or I hit enter.
To the action.
Oh,
Like, how do you?
in the demo?
Yeah, in the demo, it shows like, I guess, text boxes or whatever, that you can put in numbers of your items. Dad, do you wanna go over the demo?
Sure. This is the coolest thing about Java. You write once, run anywhere. Just bam. And you can pull this up on a Linux. You can even pull it up on a Mac. But on the Mac, last I checked, the cursor was a full-size image. Like Mac didn't support cursor scaling. But otherwise it all worked. Okay, so let's look at this. I've got a title up here. I think I used a border pane for this. I may have used a grid pane, I'm not sure. But I've got some title up at the top, and I did a shadow or some kind of weird effect on it to give it that. You can kind of see there's an effect on there, unless Land School just totally blurred it out. But you can download this and look at it yourself. I've got my things on the left. Those are just labels. Label images, label text. Some label in the middle here for a description. Probably more labels on the right. And then if I want to buy something, I put a number in there. And it totals it up down here. How does that work? Is that what you were asking?
Yes.
Okay, so there would be an action event on this text box. Just like on the button. We have this set on action. Anytime this button is clicked, it does something. You understand that? Okay, so we can do the same thing with the text box. We've set up a set on action, and anytime anything happens to that text box, we can do things. We can validate the input. We could change it to something else if they put in a negative number. We could update a label that includes the total based on the input in that text box. It's just what I did. Does that help? Check out. When you check out, you close everything right. Everything goes back to 0. The total is 0. That's cool. The cart is empty. I want to see this in everybody's program. Okay? Do not tell me my total is 0. Thanks for shopping. Right? Because that's lame.
Is that whenever you put on the action handler for checkout, or do you just generate a new scene, or do you actually, or is there like a show dialogue?
I just updated all the values. Oh, what do you mean? For the window?
Yeah.
Maybe a new scene. There's different ways of doing it. You can do it a handful of different ways. I don't actually have the source code for this anymore. I don't know where I put it.
Well, I was just wondering what to search out, that's all. I didn't know if you actually have if there's like a command to just do a show.
A pop-up?
Or something like that.
There might be.
Well, I bet there is, it's just, I didn't know how you want
I don't care how you do it. I
Okay.
mean, there's lots of ways of doing it, but to create a new window or create a new scene is not.
It's not very hard, you just
Right.
create a new scene
Yeah.
on the action event. Well, I mean, you create a class for it and then you call that class. That has a new scene in it.
Right. I wonder if there may be a pop-up message that might work. Hey, look at that. Pop-up window. I bet one of these would probably serve the purpose
Okay.
for a message like that. I don't think I use this, but you know, you look. If it's GUI related, there's probably something for it.
What's the difference between a pop-up and a pop-up window?
I don't know. Click on it,
Pop-
read.
Pop-up is inline, it looks like.
Is a special window-like container for a scene graph. Typically used for tooltip-like notification, drop-down boxes, menus, and so forth. So there's probably some things derived from pop-up. It's not abstract though. They didn't tell us it was abstract, so you can straight up use a pop-up. But apparently it could be anything that pops up. I'm thinking a pop-up window is probably a pop-up window. No decorations or title bar.
I think I'll just create a scene.
Alright, there's different ways
I
of
mean,
doing it.
it looks like it'll do what? You can't make it pretty.
No, you can't make it pretty. It's just like message box, I think, in the Windows API. You can add the event handler.
It's there right on screen.
Change the focus.
You change his height properties and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. There's way too much here for me to cover all of it, but I can show you how to learn. And I can help you if you tackle something and you get lost, or you feel like it's not doing what it should be doing, then I can help you with that. Any other questions? I'll show some more examples next week, but I feel like we've probably covered enough for one day. Probably let that soak in, and then we'll do some like pictures or animations or something on Thursday. All right.